Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, we are talking events. We're diving into the world that I live and breathe in the idea of how do we leave our guests feeling? How do we think about their experience, what they feel, what their connection to our mission is, how we get them further invested, what are those stories that we tell, and how do we shape their experience with their event? Now, unlike you, I spend a lot of time diving into research, understanding, trying to better understand how the events we create build some neuroscience connections. So I am super excited to nerd out today and dive into all of the science and the neurology behind space and experience with Ariel Ruiz, a content creator and designer who does incredible experiences. And we're feeling very lucky to have her here today to sort of share all her wisdom with us. Thank you, and welcome to the show, Ariel.
Thank you for having me. Stoked to have this conversation with you two.
Yay. Well, Kristen, let's do the formal introduction.
Let's do. Ariel Ruiz is a neuro-informed experiential creative director who transforms how spaces make people feel. I love that. With a background designing rides and parades for the world's most iconic theme parks, she bridges the gap between technical design and emotional resonance. Her work blends spatial storytelling with neuroscience, spirituality, and sacred design principles to create experiences that support nervous system regulation, creative transformation, and communal resonance. Drawing from both science and intuition, she helps designers, architects, and IPs reveal the invisible elements that turn ordinary spaces into meaningful experiences. This conversation is going to be rad. Let's frame up first for folks, because I think for some folks, they're like, wait, what?
What? Big words.
Yeah,
Wait,
I know
what?
it's kind of a mouthful.
No, just even thinking about space.
Yeah.
And what that can be. So let's frame up the idea of experiential design. What is it and why is it important?
Yeah, thank you for setting me up there. Experience design is like simply just designing for the guest experience. A lot of my verbiage is Disney-fied. I spent a lot of time like working in the parks and then working for the parks.
Yep.
So it's like very much like they always reference like the guest, and a lot of our training is like from the guest perspective. So essentially it's just like creating the most intimate, intentionally designed experience for the guests. Like imagine if you are having someone over at your house, hopefully you would want them to feel like comfortable and seen and celebrated. And that's basically what experience design is, just on a larger scale.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks or nonprofit friends out there, when they think of events, their focus for the experience of the event is what is happening on stage. And I love that
that's only like one part.
That is exactly right. I love that we're kind of kicking the doors open on this to think about, no, we're in a whole collective space together and what that can be. I love it.
Well, I've been to the events where there's sort of a game of comparisons happening where an organization goes to another organization's event and is like, well, they had roses on the table, so we need roses on the table, but it doesn't necessarily make for a better experience. So to me, it comes down to that purpose. What are you designing for? Ariel, you said the story that we're telling. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you build on a story to create an experience, to design a space, and to think about that sort of the guest experience of the event?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to thank you for this question, because honestly, this like whole transition into kind of like even exploring the corporate world, like events, I feel is fairly new-ish. So like a quick backstory, like I'm essentially, and I've made this transition earlier last year, but I stepped away officially from theme parks earlier last year, like top of 2024. And I've been just trying to figure out how can I apply these principles in like the magic behind the gates into the real world. They're just like design principles, right? And then like with the content, like more commercial people were reaching out to me. I thought I would continue in the entertainment space, which I may still, TBD. But it's just interesting, like people like you, schools have reached out, interior designers have reached out. And I'm like, oh, like this is, I think there's there's definitely an opportunity to kind of cross and have these principles serve outside the gates. But yeah,
well, I think our whole world could be thought of as an experience, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's been interesting. It's really, my approach is I'm treating it like you basically have to kind of create like a script, like a lot of like theater work, film work in for rides. Everything starts with a script, and then all design choices are influenced by that. And when I was introduced into commercial world earlier this year, towards the end of last year, I was like, where's your guys' script? Like, what are you guys making your choices off of? And I found it's like traditional interior design or experience design is really based off of like aesthetics, which I think is beautiful. And I think there's a time and place for that. But I'm like over here, like, I'm like, what's that word? Like, I'm just like so naive to the commercial space. I'm like, well, where's the story? Like, why can't you incorporate like the mission a little bit more in tension with like the emotions that want to be evoked? And I feel like I'm some sort of like glitch, like trying to get in, or not trying to get into, but being introduced into this like commercial space, if that makes sense.
And yeah, I think that commercial spaces have a lot of experiential design naturally, well, maybe not naturally, very thoughtfully built into them. I mean, I know certainly going through, just from an event perspective, I don't know. Have you ever heard of Priya Parker?
Not on the top of my head. Maybe if I saw a picture or something.
She's a thought leader that is in the space of conflict negotiation. And in her work in conflict negotiation, she would design these gatherings that were intended to like get diametrically opposed thoughts and viewpoints into a room, and then think about how that room informs the discussion and the decisions being made. And in that, she wrote a book called The Art of Gathering, where she also identified, it comes down to the purpose, the story. Like, what are we there to accomplish? How do we get to that story base to inform every decision? And I mean, we certainly find that in the world of fundraising events. We're creating these big galas that for a long time our organizations would be like, it's casino night. But the story of their work was about housing or shelter, right? And as soon as we transformed into speaking about their mission and getting very specific on that story, then every single choice could be built off of that.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, everything like it looks like everything around our life and consumption and experience is like literally based off of story, whether we're conscious of it or not. And I think it's really fascinating, and it's super powerful when you can acknowledge, oh, this is what I have to get clear on. And then it just opens up the entire world of design options or choices to you, really.
When you're designing, do you think about, in addition to kind of maybe the story of the space, do you think about the story of the guest? Meaning, here's person X, they know nothing about this organization. Our intent is to bring them into this space. Like, what does that look like when you're looking at the design story from the guest point of view? What does that help you? Decisions does that help you make?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the design process, there's layers upon layers, and we're talking about one layer. And it's basically like the guest experience, the guest POV. And yeah, it's just like a lot of my training, like for rides, let's say, for example, we're working on plans, and every movement is like, okay, when the ride vehicle is like this, what is the guest experience? Even before the queue, right? It's just like very intentional. So it's very much ingrained into my design practice and kind of like the work that my studio does. It's very much like being able to put yourself in the shoes of like, I am so new to this space. I'm here for like, I don't know, 8-10 hours in the world of theme parks, but maybe this event, I'm here for a few hours. I have no idea what this world is. How would I believe that I'm immersed in this world? And yeah, so it's just being able to take yourself out of the designer or whatever position you're in, put yourself in the POV of the guest, and just, a lot of it comes down to empathy too. So I find that like you have to have some sort of empathy to even like want to step out of your shoes, to acknowledge, okay, this is someone that's not maybe fluent in our world. How can we make sure that they have a beautiful time, obviously, but like, how can we also kind of walk them through this world without giving them a literal script to read off of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. I'm wondering if you can share an example. I'm thinking about, for our folks out there thinking about events, if you can share with us an example about how humans interact with space, because I think that is a very different way for folks to think about their quote unquote ballroom or wherever it is that their gathering is happening. What does that look like?
Yes. How do people interact with space? Well, IKEA is a good example.
Yeah.
There's so much design and like shopping psychology and marketing psychology. And there's all these different layers that you can put on top of an experience. But like, if you really want to like understand it, they have it down to a science. It's like the way that the lighting is done, that yellow brick road that is laid down, like it's laid down very intentional. The signage, it's designed to be actually confusing. It's like, it's so intentional. And like, obviously as the people shopping, you're not thinking about, like, why is it designed like this? But like me, everywhere I go, I'm like, why is it like, I guess from a designer's perspective, I'm like, why is it like this? Or why isn't the signage better? Or things like that. But IKEA is like, I feel a beautiful example of how space can actually make you feel something. And you know, like a lot of theater too, I don't know how immersed in like the theater world or like theme park world, just like color, sound cues, scent cues, literally instantaneously make you feel something and make you change your direction. You know, there's just, is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm thinking about my IKEA experiences now, and that it doesn't feel like I'm working hard to move through the space. It feels like I'm actually liberated to make some decisions about this glass or whatever. But we often have, I just need to run in there for one thing. It's not built for that. Like, I don't know how you do that.
No, not at IKEA.
When you go to IKEA, you understand the experience is I'm going to move through the yellow brick road. I might take one of those weird shortcuts that they mark, but you don't know where you're going to end up, which is its own thing.
Yeah.
But just thinking about really changing how you're looking at a room and where your focus is and what that looks like.
Yeah. And I think just also like reiterating that, like, don't be fooled. Every design choice, every space that you walk into has been intentionally, mostly designed with like lighting choices, color choices, tile choices, layouts.
Good or bad.
Yes. Yes, there is a duality.
What's
to
it like
everything.
in your world when you walk into the bad lighting choice, the bad design choice?
Oh my gosh, I just get so annoyed. I'm like, I need to call the head of whatever.
We need to change this right now. Well, so you just mentioned a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
You mentioned what it looks like, how it's lit, what it feels like, what it smells like, color choices being used. So talk to us a little bit about like, what are the design elements you're thinking of when you're designing an experience?
Everything and above.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's interesting. And I've since the content has taken off, I've really had to lean into documenting my creative practice, which has been an interesting exercise in itself, and being able to articulate it, because it kind of comes natural to me. I mean, I spent like 6 years at design schools and art schools, and it just like, it's this muscle that just comes natural. Like I have a prompt and then I bust something out with a team, whatever. So that's been interesting on trying to figure out how to articulate the design process. But so you're asking, what are the design choices?
What are those elements you're thinking about? I mean, you mentioned a few of them, but give us a little bit more detail about some of those choices, and like, how does smell impact an experience, or how does color impact an experience?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I hear. So I think there are quite a few different levels of additives that you can explore, but I think like I would like really love to clarify that like any design choices are going to be fed by that story, having a really clear understanding of that foundation of like, what is the story? What is the mission? What are the emotions we want to be evoked in this space, right? And we're thinking of like an event kind of scenario. My brain keeps on going to like ride blueprints.
Well, tell us ride blueprint. Tell us about a ride. Like, how did you start to make informed choices about various elements of a ride experience?
Yeah. And I do want to preface, it's like these rides, they take like minimum 5 years from like concept to build.
Which is amazing to me.
Yeah, it's wild. And then it's also like 20 plus hands are like on these with multiple scenes. It was not just me. I was one of a very large team to work on these. I just want to make that clarification. It's not one person designing a ride. It's like teams of teams. But yeah, you know, again, I think the process is just starting with the story, and then the rides are broken down into like scenes. So each scene has its own script with its own like emotions that want to be evoked and that type of stuff. And then that all influences design choices, and then scents if necessary, or color choices, lighting choices, sound choices, you know, like just having that base of a script, then that helps build the world of like getting really creative with, well, what is the shape of this window, you know? And then you go back to the larger script. Oh, we're actually in a mansion. So you have to think like this, you know, you're not going to put a modern window inside of like a mansion type of thing. That's super like thematic, but I hope that's, is that communicating kind of how?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about scenes, because I'm thinking about our events.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like they have scenes, right? Like there's the pre, there's when folks come in to the event, they're getting registered, maybe they're having a cocktail hour, getting warmed up. That's sort of a scene, and how we want to bring people into that space and what that looks like. And then we open the doors to the main space where maybe they're seated for food, for dinner, where the program's going to happen. And then within that program, there are scenes and a story that we're building. It's got a whole, you know, our listeners have heard till we're blue in the face about your event is a story, right? And so there are all these chapters. You're talking about them as scenes, but there's actually chapters to the events. And each one of those is a part of the narrative build. And then you're, you know, coming down the fun backside, and maybe you have a DJ and an after party, and what that look and feel is. And it's not that we're advocating you go blow $20 bazillion on lights and all of these things, but that you can make some specific shift choices so that you're helping people understand they're moving through a story and it's dynamic, right? That it's shifting gears, that it's moving and building and changing. And so that where they come out on the other side is different than how they came in on the front side. And there are some design choices in that that can help gird that story that you're moving them through.
When you were when you were designing with Disney, what was the like sort of in that process, what was the completion moment for you all? Like, did you actually go through the experience as a guest before it gets revealed to guests? Is there like your own personal experience with it before a guest ever boards the ride?
Yes. So I didn't have that actual experience. That's for like, there's a few like layers of teams. And I'm assuming there is a design. I'm trying to think of like the timing. I was never on that team that was like, okay, collectively, we're going to go through this whole thing from the POV. Like I obviously like the studies I did, like 3D modeling, I would sit through the model and like from the guest perspective, from the ride vehicle, like going through, okay, does everything look right? Like, does this feel right? Type of thing. But yeah, I mean, definitely before build, there's usually like some type of like VR experience, or Disney, I think they have their dish. It's like a whole room where you're like immersed and you get to like experience it.
Amazing.
And like the higher ups make notes from that. And then they send them down to the people who are like modeling and drafting and all that stuff. And then, yeah, that's really where a lot of that work is done in like 3D model space. Because then once you're building, you can't mess around when it's built.
Yeah. Change of plans, new plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm thinking about experience, and I'm thinking experience in the rear view is a memory. How are we creating memories through design. What's that link?
Emotions. And that's what I've been really leaning into with like, as I'm trying to document my process and like trying to communicate with these newer clients that are coming into my world right now. Like we talk about story and like script and there's exercises to do that. But the next step is really focusing on like emotions. Like the only way to imprint memories into people is through an emotion or an experience. And I think like from a branding or marketing perspective, like memories are the biggest asset that you can create for yourself. If you can associate yourself with like a heartfelt, beautiful memory that someone had with their sister, and they can always relate that experience to your brand, you're golden. Not from like a heavy, like we're manipulative type of situation. It's more like, I think it's actually really cool. Like I love the idea that like I literally through experience design as it's evolving, I literally just get paid to create memories for people. Essentially, that's like my approach. Like it's so powerful. And obviously there isn't a lot of conversation around it because I feel it's kind of more like the nerdy aspect of design, but like memory, once you're locked in, once you're able to like sync up with someone's a good release of oxytocin or something with your brand and experience, like it's hard to get rid of memories like that. And then you throw on scent on top of that or like a delicious meal. It's like, there's so much science behind like how long memories are taken into the body and they're like forever held with you, or sounds, or, there's just so much power behind that.
Well, and what I think too, sometimes, especially for our nonprofit friends, when they're thinking about their stories, they're thinking about that emotional resonance in a moment that is galvanizing people to act, right? To donate, to support a mission. But I don't hear them speaking as often. And I think actually is critical in terms of stewardship and retention over time is that creation of memory.
Yeah.
It's not just an in the moment thing that disappears, right? If we're doing it well, if we're stewarding and shepherding that process well, they're having it, it's leaving this imprint. And that becomes that touchstone that people can come back to that is attached to our mission, which is our nonprofit's brand, right? I think that's such a cool thing for people to start thinking about.
One of my favorite.
And I just some
go ahead.
ideas. Can I share?
Yeah.
I think it would be so cool. Like, I don't know if you've ever explored crafting the experience of the food that you serve. Like if you can be really intentional with the emotions that you want to be evoked, you can do like a partnership with some type of chef where it's like, we want our guests to feel super relaxed and like heart open to give, or, like just being really intentional about that. And then like, I don't know, I'm very much into experimental theater, like outside of my work and like, immersive dinners and stuff. And it's very much like, I just think it's so fascinating, the cross between like a dinner like you guys would throw and the opportunity to put not like huge thematics behind it, but like being intentional. Like there are foods, what are they called? You know how chocolate is like
an aphrodisiac?
Makes everything better food?
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
An aphrodisiac?
Yes, one of those.
Yes.
But like foods and teas and there are different foods that can activate different feelings and emotions. And I think that's another layer of like, oh, what if you like intentionally crafted, had this like dinner being released. And as you were talking about your mission, the guests are having this beautifully indulgent type of dessert that activates something. And then there's sound and then there's lighting. And I just think there's so much
no one was ever
opportunity.
upset when they were putting like chocolate into their mouth, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned cortisol. I want to talk, or oxytocin. You mentioned oxytocin. I want to talk about oxytocin and cortisol release for a second, because here's where I get
We're all ears.
Here's where I get nerdy. So oftentimes right before we're raising funds, we ask individuals to share their story, or clients of the mission to share their story. And those stories, when told in an ethical way with the sort of trauma informed, with the person at the center of it, can be these emotionally connective moments where people really understand, where I may not have experienced the same thing you experienced, but I can walk in your shoes through your personal story, right? When we tell those stories, we have this moment where we often use video to tell the story. And then we invite that person up to the stage for the call to action. And there is this moment that happens beat by beat where the story ends, there is an emotional connection, an oxytocin cortisol release, and then we call the person to the stage and the lights come up and we say, now introducing Kristen to the stage. And people have this moment of, this is a real person in the room. So now they're like, connection increases, right? And you can hear it. They're like applauding, and now they're applauding more and louder. Then there's that like Price is Right coming down moment where the person like makes their way to the stage and you can audibly hear the crowd respond with a louder applause. And then they get to the microphone and they have this very real moment. I've seen some speakers have a moment of shyness, a moment of celebration, a moment of joy, a tear. All of those, whatever that response is because it's rare that we're standing in front of a room full of people and responding to the fact that they're applauding. That real reaction elicits another real reaction from an audience. And by the time they have a call to action, we have now sort of created this emotional arc for folks, this very deep connection, this cortisol and oxytocin release. And when cortisol and oxytocin are released, giving goes up by 50% because there is that like real visceral sense of, I can make a difference here. I can be a part of this, and that sense of belonging that's created. So there's a sort of little magic. I think Paul Zak calls it the moral molecule. There's a little magic that happens when oxytocin is released. I love the like that moment because you can see it happening in the room.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful programming.
Yeah.
And I've never heard it from that perspective. And I love what I'm also learning from your guys' world as well. That's so cool.
Well, and then if you add salmon dinner or you add chocolate dessert, there are specific foods that actually help to increase the cortisol release or that oxytocin release.
Nice.
Well, the thing that drew me into your content was that you have these beautifully done TikToks where you show and speak to elements of spatial design. And one of those elements that you talk about is round spaces. And I wanted to ask you to talk about the impact of round space because a lot of the work we do is in social justice. And a lot of the organizations we work with are social justice organizations. And I was just so compelled to understand, you know, here we are in like ballrooms, like square, boring squares. And you talked about the impact of circles. And I wanted to hear a little bit about that because I think that this could change how I design events in the future.
Oh, wow. That's powerful. Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm glad it's resonating. I'm glad it's resonated with you. Yeah, circles are so powerful. And again, it's like so simple. It's like circle, square. We see them all the time, but we don't even acknowledge the like emotional or conscious impact it has on us, but it really does, like especially on a biological level. I mean, circles at the essence are so feminine already. I think initially when you walk into a circular space, it breaks down hierarchy. And I think that's so beautiful because it's more like just communal. Everybody's hopefully at like eye level. It's more like pedagogical. It's like more like there's no like hierarchies, I guess.
Yeah.
That you would generally experience in a square space. I think I referenced like this one study in like when there's a square room, like a classroom, essentially, and there's a square room and the desks are set up, it's like automatic hierarchy. The people are automatically going to pay attention to the people in the front and they're going to act a little bit differently. But if you put those same people in like a circular space, like it breaks down that hierarchy. It's more communal. It's more open conversation. People like cortisol's level actually like drop down. There's like more opportunity for everybody to like sync up energetically. And they're just like, it's like very fascinating human nature. And if you think about it, it's just like a circle. It was literally just a circle.
Yeah.
It's really so simple. But yeah, we're not really like taught the science behind these things really from design perspectives.
Well, and what's so interesting too about the idea of circles, I'm thinking of, you know, a vast majority of the events that we're working on, people are seated at circular tables with their group in the room. And what that does when we're oriented toward our community, toward each other, and what that does energetically, is just fascinating to start thinking about. Just that simple, how you orient your room, where folks are seated, how they're looking, how they are in space together.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, I sometimes put the stage in the middle, and I never understood why it worked so well until I saw your content, and I was like, oh, because the stage in the middle creates a different vibe in the room. I mean, just from like the simplest of terms, you're looking through the stage at other people, right? Like you can see how other audience members are responding, and it creates definitely like a community within a community, especially if folks are sitting at round tables and the stage is in the middle, and now you're looking across the stage at other people. It just creates a more engaged audience, honestly.
Yeah.
And you don't feel as far away.
Yeah. Kind of like an arena. How high is your stages?
Usually like 18 inches, so like a foot and a half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just enough that you're getting like heads above heads, but not so much that you're like looking up.
Yeah. That's so cool. I was actually thinking, have you guys ever thought about like, I know I've seen some wedding receptions where it's like a whole circle, the whole like ceremony and dining experience is done through like this whole circle space.
I love that idea.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting at Elevate, the event conference this year. Zarek, our speaker, was on stage speaking, and he was having this really real moment on stage where you could tell he was super nervous. He named it.
Yeah.
He was inviting people into his process. He talked about his journey. And then he came down off the stage.
Yeah.
And he asked the room to form a circle and link hands as folks were able to.
Oh, wow.
And it totally shifted the dynamic of the space. And it went from all of us leaning in, supporting Zarek on stage, right? We were all like, we're here for you. We've got you. We're going to catch you. To actually all of us being in community together.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. Everybody was already leaning in, and then it became a we really quickly in that circle. And you could feel it energetically. It was fascinating to watch happen.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you've already experienced kind of that. I'm curious, like, I definitely want to keep in touch after this. I'm curious how your events go, if you incorporate more circular experiences or not into your spaces.
Yeah, I literally right before we got on this meeting or this call, I was in conversation with a venue and I said, how do we do a sunken round space? And he was like, what? And I was like, oh, let me show you why. Because of that element of, for some organizations, like really removing hierarchy is a really powerful way to, center different voices, to bring people all into like a collective we action. And I think right now, especially just in the like current political environment we're in, so often we're positioned as like left, right, red, blue, us, them. So to think of we as a choice that we're making in the design of the event and in the story we're telling, I think that like idea of circular design, it just speaks to me in a way that I'm like, oh yes, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's beautiful. And then also like just wrapping back to having this like script or piece of narrative that can kind of influence your design. It's also a really powerful tool when you're working with like a larger team or like money decision makers. Like we're making this decision because X, Y, Z, and you have that thing to come back to instead of just saying, oh, well, like, we're going to do that rock and roll theme because funsies. Like you can actually say, no,
I'm just feeling it.
Yeah. You can actually say like, no, like this color is actually related to XYZ or whatever, this color palette or shape or whatever. It's a really powerful communication tool I'm finding too with my clients.
I love that. Well, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those design choices, the shift experience. So we'll be right back with Ariel Ruiz.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but something happens to the human biology when we gather in circles. Ancient cultures knew this, built it into every sacred space. Now, neuroscience is proving why. Every culture on Earth has curated circular gathering spaces. When researchers started studying people meeting in circles versus squares, they found that in circular spaces, our stress hormones dropped 60% within minutes. People before us weren't just following tradition, they were really tapping into human biology. Studies show that our heart rhythm actually sync up when we gather in this circular way. Imagine a world reshaped by this wisdom, not conference rooms of hierarchy, circles of genuine connection, not spaces that separate us, but architecture that reminds us that we are part of something larger. Circles are calling us back to connect everywhere. It's been your favorite and most memorable circular gathering.
Welcome back. We are here with Ariel Ruiz talking about experiential design. What is neuroarchitecture?
Neuroarchitecture is
Because
so
I
cool.
love the
I'm
word and I want to know all the things.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of newer. I would say towards the end, middle last year, I started like deep diving into it. But essentially, it's like incorporating like it's acknowledging the biology and neurology of the human and how space impacts the human at its essence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it's like,
I was going to say, tell me how space is impacted by architecture.
well, there's many, many ways. We can do like emotionally, biologically, consciously, but neuroarchitecture, for example, there's like a whole world of neuroarchitects that they've done studies on like this ceiling height activates XYZ and this shape does this and this, like they've done the studies, which I find so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have capacity to like learn an entire new design language. I've kind of just dipped my toes into that space, but I just find it so fascinating. Like, of course, there's a whole world of people that have done these studies on like this shape activates XYZ, and we should incorporate that into our architecture spaces, buildings.
And I think I'm thinking of our nonprofit friends out there whose heads are kind of exploding right now. And they're like, I didn't know I was doing X, Y, or Z. Like, we're presenting all of these as just ideas in the ether that you can tap into. Think about, pick one, maybe think about it, but that there are choices being made, right? That the spaces, and sometimes it can be as simple as you walk in a space and you're like, oh, hell no, this is not happening. But you walk into another space and you're like, I don't know why, but this feels really good to me. There is actually science behind what's working on your brain and body in that space. Go with the vibe. It's kind of, like that there are reasons why. You don't have to know all of them, but the space matters.
Yeah. I often find that if I walk into a venue with a low ceiling, it feels like my options are immediately limited. And as soon as I have high ceilings to work with, although some organizations will walk into a big high ceiling venue and say, oh no, it feels too cavernous.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming. But I think ceiling height can be a powerful tool to play with because it gives you lots of options for how you use screens, how you do lighting, kind of how open the space feels or how you bring it in and make it feel more intimate.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how you shift consciousness through design. You just said that you can actually the architecture can shift your consciousness.
Yeah. So I think this is more like subliminal. So again, coming back to like how experiences and spaces can imprint memories into the human body. And that's kind of a form of shaping consciousness.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So based off of the color, I don't know. Consciousness is an interesting word to define. And to say that we can shift it. I guess when I'm referencing consciousness, it's more of just like an awareness. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like an awareness? Yeah. So like surface level awareness of a tree outside, right? Could be the framing of a window or the consciousness within yourself could be like a super like psychedelic light show, or even just like one choice of light or material. There's so many aspects that can really change someone's awareness in a space. And I also want to acknowledge, again, I don't want to overwhelm anybody because there are so many like choices to be made, and there's so many cool tips and tricks, and you can go like super experimental, or like there's just so many ways to activate different emotions and memories and people's experience in a space. But I would like to like bring it down to like, you don't have to play in every single pool that we're bringing up right now. And again, just bringing it back to the basics. Like if you can really hone in on like that basic of story, mission, emotion that you want to be activated, then that will allow you to be influenced by color psychology, emotional, whatever, choosing color palettes, if that's making sense. Because I do acknowledge I don't want to overwhelm anybody with what we're sharing.
Well, I think even just thinking about it through the lens of you have the power to direct someone's attention within a space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have attention, and they're either going to give it to you in the movie you're showing, or they're going to give it to something else. And so you can think about your space and how you're using it to focus people's energy.
Beautifully said. Yeah. It's like human. It's so fascinating because we don't really talk about it in like design school, but a lot of design is basically human psychology.
Yeah.
And it's us like playing around, like curious what a person would do in XYZ situation. Or if we turn the lights down to here during a show, what is their response going to be? Or, it's really about how does a human react in these different environments.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I play with the most in event design is light and music. Those are like the two easiest low budget ways to have a huge impact. I've walked into a room that the lights are up full volume and there's no music playing. And I feel like, oh, I'm not welcome here. It's not ready.
Yeah.
It's not ready for me. But then you walk into a room and like, the vibe is right. The music is playing. There's some uplighting in the room and it just feels warm and cozy. But that's not always the case. Like sometimes I've seen organizations say, well, our color, like our logo color is green. So we want the whole room to be saturated in green. And when you're having dinner and like everyone around you has a green hue, it's not the most like appetizing, cozy feel. So I always ask folks like, well, does it feel good to you? Like when someone walks into the room, does it feel good? They'll be like, oh, it matches our logo. I'm like, but does it feel good? So when you just gave the example, Ariel, of like wanting folks to feel welcome in your home. When you are thinking about your own home and your space and inviting people in, what are the things that you do just to like create that sense of welcome?
Ooh, good question. Again, this is another one of those questions of like having to articulate what comes intuitively to me.
Right.
I don't know. And what I've found too is like, not only me, but a lot of designers, like good design, well-balanced design is kind of intuitive to a lot of people I've found. I've just recently in my practice over the last 6 months, 7 months, have been to articulate like the science behind it. And people are interested in like, oh, there's science behind this design. But I think like a lot of good design is really intuitive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, first off, it starts with me like welcoming them in like a warm tone, like so happy to see you, inviting them in. I like to have music playing in the background, offer them something to drink, make sure like the light, I like to have like ambient lighting. Even if it's just a quick chat, like to have snacks available if anybody's snacky. Just like wanting to make them comfy, that like you're welcome to like be comfy here.
Yeah. I feel like some of those good design principles, the intuitiveness of them is because they tap into some of those universals, right?
What makes us comfortable.
Right?
Yeah.
Folks might remember a couple episodes ago, I was speaking on the Elevate stage about the impact of collective effervescence, which we were also talking about. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that concept and the impact of shared energy. So we've set the stage, we've designed a space, and then something else happens in spaces when you put people in them. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, collective effervescence. Again, this is like so cool. We're like spirituality meets science. It's like our bodies are like just, there's a time in an event or like a concert or some type of like ceremony where like our hearts start to like sync up. And it's just like, I like to think of it like this extra like magic that we get to experience as humans, where it's like this collective, we all kind of experiencing the same thing. We're all moving in the same way. It's like a very magical situation that we get to experience. And it's kind of, again, kind of hard to like consciousness, like how do you, can't really confine it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's interesting. I have a example that I just experienced with someone. We were at a protest. There's a lot of those happening these days. And there were 2 different protests that were happening on the same day. And we went to one, and it was sort of like a quiet, the experience was you were in a parking lot. It was open. There was a lot of other stuff going on. Like there was a farmer's market down the road. And then later that day, I said something to the individual I was with. I said, I think they missed the opportunity to create connection. There wasn't like a sense of shared connection. And then we went to another protest where there were like chants and people were walking together, physicality. There was, sort of like a call and response happening. And all of a sudden I looked at her and I was like, that's it. That's collective effervescence. That's the moment when your heartbeat sinks, your connection gets bigger than the individual, right? Like you created something bigger than the individual and you start moving in the same direction. And that moment all of a sudden became something that she defined as, oh, I just felt that energy. I felt that magic. I felt that like I belonged to something and I felt something like I wasn't alone in this. And I'm like, that's the magic. That's the collective effervescence. And Kristen, I think in your speech, you were talking about the London study.
Yeah, they did a study in London where they put people in a theater, a live play on a stage theater, and they hooked them up to machines that were regulating heartbeat and pulse and all of those things. And they found that there was a point at which the audience heartbeats, literally data points showed them synced.
So cool.
And they found that for folks who came to the event together, who knew each other before the event, when they went out to intermission, their heartbeats stayed synced.
Whoa, can you share this link with me after?
You bet.
Yes.
I'm all over that.
We'll put the study link in the show notes. We will also put the study in the show notes. But
cool.
It's one of those things that I think we intuitively feel. And like you were talking about earlier, data and science backs these pieces
choices,
up. And so I think sometimes people are like, that's a little woo. And I'm like, it's also a little science. May feel a little woo, but it's actually science, and it's bodies in space together and what they're doing and how they're reacting and what that collective which is why events, right? It's why we talk about events. It's why we talk about not just one person taking this ride at this theme park by themselves. There is something that enhances that experience when it is multiple people sharing that experience together.
Yeah, when you can hear the scream around the corner, you know something's coming.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the event boundary. I'm throwing this out there because we actually have an organization we've worked with where they really put a lot of time and attention into that arrival experience. Like what is the experience when you first get there? Can you talk about the event boundary and what the connection to the body and the mind is in that?
Yes. So the event boundary is essentially like transitional spaces. It's a space that on a biological sense activates to the human that you are now entering into a new space, a new experience is about to be happened. And it could be done in various different ways. It could be done through like a welcoming ceremony. It can be done walking through a gateway. It could be walking through a gate. Did I say gateway? Like a door. It could even be like a little bit more theatrical. It could be a sound activation. It could be a scent that's released, and your brain is like, where's something new just entered the room. It could be a lighting activation. I'm thinking an experience or like more like an experience diner. If there's a lighting activation happening in that corner and you're over here, your brain's like, oh, it's clearly time to move this way.
Mm.
And it's just the coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think like transitional spaces are so powerful and so cool. And like the world of theme parks does this really well. If anybody's been to Disneyland, they do this all the time on like rides. Like if you really pay attention, within every scene, there's an intentional transitional space where there's like confinement to expansion all the time, but you're being whipped around a space. So you're not really acknowledging it. But Disneyland, for example, they have those tunnels that like they really confine you that everybody has to walk through. And then there's a huge expansion into like what's it called? The Main Street USA. And then you have the view of the castle. So it's like this idea of like setting up the brain, like, okay, we're going into confinement, something new is about to happen. And then you're expanded. And then your view is like, oh, wow, like so much visual yumminess to take in. And
I think that tells the body that you can leave the rest of the world behind, right? Meaning like I can forget about the real world because now here I am on Main Street USA and Disneyland, and I can like fully immerse myself in the Disney magic.
Yes. Perfectly.
We talk a lot about staging. It's the same idea, I think, but Paul Zak wrote the book Immersion, and in his book he talks about people will participate more fully when they are prepared for that participation, when there is that transitional beat, where there is clarity about how to participate. So one of the things that we often do is make sure that there's a volunteer at the door and that when they come in, that there's clarity about where they're going. They're not wandering around a big open space, but there's like clear direction. And then there's a welcome right away. And sometimes it's even a welcome cocktail or a welcome drink. And sometimes we use that threshold theory of developing maybe a like curtained area that they come through into the bigger room. So you're not just walking into that big space, but you have that transition point to help you say, okay, now I'm here. And this is sort of a moment of arrival. So I love some of the content that you've shared on YouTube and TikTok about the threshold boundary. You've given some really beautiful examples. So maybe we can give a link and direct folks to some of those, because it's really like you give some visuals that are really clear about, oh, wow, that like that intentionality can really create a different like bio-neuro connection for folks.
Yeah.
Well, and I think of boundaries too. It's also closing the door.
Yes.
Right. So we've taken people through this transitional space. We've put them into the space where the story is happening. Let's not leave weird side doors open so that people are listening to the planes outside or the loud voices at registration or whatever, you know. So I think it's about being clear on this is the space we're in now.
And now we can
want
immerse
people
ourselves in
immersed in this space.
Yeah.
How do environments become living stories?
I think intuitively, like we're all doing it already. Like I'm sure you guys tell a story unconsciously in your house, right? Like the choices of your decor, the way that your furniture is laid out, your lighting choices, if you have like really bright lights or low lights, like story is told through everywhere. And I think a home is a good example. Like we're already doing it. I unconsciously, you know, I'm kind of like out there. I like bright colors. I like nature. As you can see, this was like unintentionally, but like this is kind of telling a story of me, roughly. But yeah, no, I mean, there's that intimate level. And then there's multiple layers to this question, but it's really like objects are so potent and powerful, and you can really tell a story through an object. And this is getting kind of nerdy. And this is like really reflecting of like all my time in like theater and TV and film. We were literally trained, okay, how do we tell this story of this character in this set? Right. So that's how my brain works already. It's always like, how do we pick the perfect color of like lamp or like shade or rug that tells the story of Anne, who grew up on the East Coast with her like twin sister. You know, there's like so much depth to choice behind decorating spaces.
Yeah.
And
I immediately started thinking about, well, Anne on the East Coast, maybe there's lots of coastal references in her space. Oh, twin sister, maybe everything's doubled in this space.
yeah, yeah. And it's so fascinating. I'm just like, it's been such a fun journey, and I feel we're at the very beginning of it, but like this translation from entertainment to like outside the Golden Gates, let's say, it feels kind of meta, because I was like literally trained to pick objects to create a space that tells someone's story. But now we're in the real world. And so it's like reversing the scripting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it feels a bit meta, but yeah. And then energetically, like objects can hold on to energies, and there's a whole like spiritual energetic layer behind stories as well.
Do you hide things in your ride design?
Ride design, Easter eggs. Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to share, I think in your events, you have ample opportunity to create Easter eggs, like to tell your mission and your brand throughout your event. Disney does this really well, like on their cruise ships. I've never been on them personally, but we've studied them, and like they have iconography and like the shapes of the lamps and the material, like the textiles. It's like an Aladdin textile. It's not like a normal, just a grab and go. There's so many opportunities for Easter eggs. Like if you really sit down, you could do like a whole blueprinting of your experience or event with like, okay, now let's focus on Easter eggs. How can we incorporate this into wherever we want to?
We did an event last year where the theme was about building movements. And in that we incorporated movement anywhere we could. And so even to the point where the screens that were hanging, normally the screens would be like on a frame that's like really taut. And we did loose hanging fabric as our screen so that as people move through the room, the screen would just gently move. And so anywhere that we could incorporate movement, we even had just like a pattern of light on the wall that very slowly moved just to create movement. And dancers were throughout the event, so that the idea of movement building was part of the program, but then we were like building that into the design elements as well.
That's awesome. And the beauty, like acknowledging that not every single person who walks through your design, your experience is going to even have the wherewithal to acknowledge.
Right.
Oh, wow, like screens that last year they were taut, but now they're flowing.
Right. No one would. Yeah.
But unconsciously, it's like, it's setting the tone for the experience, and whether they're aware of it or not, it definitely influenced their experience and their overall takeaway from that event.
Yeah. All of those pieces are working on folks on some layer, some level. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether they're probably not aware of it, but it's
even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where the magic comes in, because people leave there. If you've done like a really good story arc, right? Like every element of your design, your program all builds the same story. People leave there going, oh my God, that was the best event. And they cannot tell you why. It's not like it was because of the food or it was because of the design or they can't tell you why. They're just like vibing high because the vibe of the space was, working on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to invite Ariel to join us in the fundraising elevator. So we'll be right back.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the fundraising elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We are here with Ariel Ruiz talking about experiential design. Ariel, get in the fundraising elevator with us, please, where we're all headed up. What is a bit of wisdom or one tip you'd share for nonprofits right now to keep them heading up?
One piece of advice. Sorry. I'm thinking.
Thinking's
it.
good.
Thinking's always good.
Have fun with it. Like, be okay with breaking the rules. I don't want to lead anybody down any, like, just be open to exploring new ways of doing things. And it's okay to think outside the box. I think it'll be more, it could be more like eye-opening and exciting if you allow yourself to do that, maybe. And rather than like traditional design choices.
I love that.
That's great.
Well, I want to make sure that people know how to follow you because I follow you. I take notes on your content regularly where I'm like, oh, well, that will change things. So how can folks find your content? How do they get a hold of you? Promote yourself, please.
Yeah. So my socials, I'm arielruiz.creative, and it's spelled a little bit special, creative. So we can share the links with you.
Yep.
And I'm not doing one-to-one client work anymore, but I'm actually creating something for one-to-many, kind of for like the commercial clients and it's really setting up that foundation. I help like walk you through setting up that foundation of like, what is the mission? What is our story? Kind of the emotions of your experience or blueprint, whatever it may be. So then you can layer on like, okay, now we can make all these design choices because we have the foundation.
That's amazing.
So that's going to be coming out soon. And just on the socials right now. And my email's there if you want to reach out. I'm always open to like collaborations, meeting new people. I'm enjoying the world that social media has opened up to me. It's really fascinating. It's worldwide.
Oh, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Well, we will be sure to share your TikTok, your YouTube channel, as well as your website so folks can get a hold of you and learn from you and be inspired by you. Thank you for the content you create. I think that it is always exciting to see how a design choice that has felt perhaps intuitive has actual like science and connection and design principles behind it. So thank you for the inspiration. Thank you for chatting with us today. And we appreciate you joining us in the fundraising elevator.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to share, like, this is only our second conversation, but I thank you too and what your guys' work, like the intentionality behind your work, I think is so fantastic. And I haven't experienced your experiences yet in person, but like I can already tell like the intentionality behind it. I think you guys are doing amazing work, not only what you create, but the people that you're also serving. So thank you for inviting me into your world. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Stay well.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Know that your nervous system changes the moment you cross a threshold. And it is no surprise that ancient builders knew this. They were designing entrances to literally reprogram human consciousness. Let's get into it. Research from the University of Notre Dame shows something fascinating about this. Walking through a doorway creates what scientists call an event boundary in your brain. Your neural activity literally reorganizes itself, creating a clean slate for new experiences. Ancient temples use this biological reset point with incredible precision. For example, like the Japanese torii gates or the processional entrances into an Egyptian temple. Don't be mistaken, these aren't just beautiful. They're quite literally technologies for consciousness. I mean, get this, the subtle elevation changes to the compression and expansion of a space. We love a good reveal. and even the shadow patterns are designed to shift your nervous system to heightened awareness. As an experiential designer from the world of theme parks traditionally, I am loving this series, and I'm fascinated by how these threshold principles can transform modern spaces. Whether it's a wellness center or a sacred site, understanding entrance psychology changes everything about how we design for the human experience. So tell me, what entrance has most powerfully affected you?
We've been partnering with Greater Giving for over 20 years as our go-to event auction software. Greater Giving allows us to do our job, planning fundraising events, even better because we can manage guest lists, seating, bid number assignments, and sales all in one place.
That makes it great for our nonprofit partners and their guests. Check out Greater Giving for your next event at greatergiving.com. Link in the show notes.